So welcome back to another review of Dragon's Crown. It has been 4 years since I reviewed the PS3 version of the game. I reviewed it with Rob. I can't believe it's been 4 years now. One of my favorite action RPGs of all time. An incredible game, and we're going to come back to this version in a second. So, Atlas and Vanillaware have released this updated version for PS4 called Dragon's Crown Pro. And we're going to get into this. Is it worth it getting this version of it? And let's go back to the past and talk about the core game, which was on PS3 to begin with. What suckered me into this game, it played very much like some beautiful games from my past. Games like the Dungeons and Dragons game. Remember those, the arcade games? This was released on the Sega Saturn. And Princess Crown. This was also released on the Sega Saturn as well. And obviously, Odin Sphere. Now, what all these games have in common is they're action RPGs. They're side view action RPGs. So you start off going through the level, you fight hordes and hordes of monsters, you gain levels, you buy equipment, rinse and repeat. That's the core foundation of it. But you could have up to 4 people playing with you, co-op, or have your friends come online and play with you. I only played the original game with my wife. We played it every night. We finished the game. We had a love affair with this game. It was so damn cool. And what makes this game so great, the foundations of the original so great, is it kind of reminds me of an 80s fantasy movie. The soundtrack alone is godlike. It is so phenomenal. It just blows my mind every time I listen to it. And you're going through dungeons and labyrinths, and the music illustrates it perfectly. And speaking of illustrations, the hand-drawn artwork is a must-see of the game. It's just wonderful. And I feel bad because there's some levels that I run through in like 2 seconds, and I know some artist spent 3 weeks to a month, if not 2 months, drawing that level out. The attention to detail in the graphics is gorgeous. It's all hand-drawn, back like we used to love in the olden days. And the other thing I also like is the exaggerated character designs. I know there was a bit of an outcry from some people out there in the day of how some of these characters look. They're exaggerated proportions. And let me say, I was not offended by anything. I'm somebody who doesn't get offended by many things. I love the game. I picked the fighter. My wife picked the sorceress. We had a great time. And that's the thing. In the game, there's 6 classes. There's fighter, Amazon, elf, dwarf, wizard, and sorceress, as I say. So you can pick all those and have your friends pick different characters. And even if you're playing by yourself, you can get NPC characters. You can find them in the dungeons, bring them back to life. They will join your party. So you're never truly alone in this game. And it also reminds me of another game like Golden Axe. It really has that kind of feel. And the monster designs in this game are second to none. The bosses will blow your mind. You might have figured out by now that I like the original Dragon's Crown quite a bit. And that brings us to this version of the game here. Dragon's Crown Pro. Is this one worth it? Is it worth getting this? Okay, listen to me very clearly here. If you have the PS3 version and you do not have a 4K TV, there really isn't a reason to buy this. Because the only thing that's really outstanding here, the visuals are unbelievable in 4K. They look amazing. The other thing that it has is the soundtrack. It has the original soundtrack and an orchestrated soundtrack. So think about that. If you have this game, you don't have a 4K TV, the only thing you're really going to get is, the orchestrated soundtrack. Is that worth it? I don't know. Probably not at this point. Probably not. I think this game is for people who have never played the original, who have a PS4, they have a 4K TV, and you've never played it. This is the version to get. Graphically speaking, output-wise, it's second to none. It's the ultimate version of Dragon's Crown. If you have a 4K TV, if you don't worry about it. That's the end of the review for you. You don't have to worry about it. But if you are thinking about updating your TVs or anything like that, you will definitely see graphic fidelity that looks stunning and amazing. And what do I think of the new orchestrated soundtrack? I think it's pretty good. I really like it. I prefer the original because that's the original that I played and I'm kind of old school, even if it's only 4 years ago that way. I think what they've added more instruments to some of the compositions. I do not make music, so this is just from my ear, from listening. Nobody will be offended by the orchestrated soundtrack. It sounds absolutely gorgeous. Another thing that the Pro version has is it allows you to play with PS3 users and Vita users. So it's got like compatibility in that way, so you can play with all your friends on all the platforms. So nobody's left out. Everybody gets to play together. That was one of the biggest things that upset me with Dragon's Crown is I could never get enough people over or in line to play in a big group. I was just like, how can this be possible? I finally get the ultimate game. I always was in high school wanting something like this. I finally get the game. I can't get enough people together. Makes sense, doesn't it? It absolutely does. The other thing I want to speak about the levels is I spoke earlier that it reminds me of like an 80s movie in that regard, in the high fantasy music and setting of it. The one thing that I do want to say, it reminds me of Choose Your Own Adventure books, another staple from the 80s. So you'll be going through a level, you'll get to a door, and you can go through that door and end the level that way, or you can continue on to a boss character. There's certain branching moments within the story, within the levels themselves. And that is really cool. So it gives you a lot of reasons to go through a level over and over again, and you'll do that anyways to build up your character, to gain levels, to buy better equipment, to enhance your character, to get different abilities. And that's what me and my wife used to do. We used to just go through these levels over and over again and grind and grind and grind. And then sometimes you get to a boss character and they kick your ass at certain times. Just grind and update all your equipment and all that stuff. But I just love the look of this game. I think they knocked it out of the park. Would I have rather had a Dragon's Crown 2? I think so. Of course. And for a lot of people, this will not be worth updating to, because this is a full price game. And if you have the PS3 version, you don't have a 4K TV, that's the big selling point here. That's what it's all about. If you don't have that 4K TV, stick with the original. The original is a great game and still looks great at 1080p. But if you're a connoisseur, you have a 4K TV, you want the best version of Dragon's Crown around, you can't go wrong with this version. It is the ultimate version that you can get. And I'm looking forward to one day getting Dragon's Crown 2. That will be absolutely incredible. But I just want to come in here and talk about Dragon's Crown Pro on the PS4. So anyways, guys, until next time.